Story 1. Any attempt to talk about her issues was avoided. Instead, she bottled everything up until it became too much, and she decided she was done. Story 2. She did not hide the existence of her child, whom she abandoned to be raised by her father, which I only found out about much later. Wait, sorry, I meant 2 children. Wait, sorry, I meant 3 children. I am such a good judge of character. Ted Bundy would have released me like a fisherman releasing a minnow. Story 3. Going to therapy must have really hit a deep nerve. The moment the spotlight turned in her direction, which was supposed to happen in a totally normal and professional way, she completely shut down. From that point on, there was no way to save our marriage. It has been 15 years since then, and whatever happened affected her deeply. She declined over the years and is now completely mentally ill. In my opinion, she is very unwell. It is sad. Story 4. Do not be emotionally abusive. Do not be a miserable person and blame me for everything wrong in her life. Actually show some affection more than a handful of times a year. Put in some effort. Do not cheat on me and get pregnant by her coworker who was like a brother to her. Story 5. Look at me as a partner above all else and not as a means to have a baby. I constantly felt her appreciation for me was temporary at best. Her motivations were clearly evident early on. Did I want to have sex? Not happening if she wasn't ovulating. I have zero interest in being a part-time dad. Why would I ever want to have a baby with someone who seems to hate me? Also, staying sober was important. She was an alcoholic for all intents and purposes. My life was difficult. Story 6. Where to start? Do not fall into the habit of lying to me. Do not fall into the habit of speaking to me as though she hated me. Do not expect that I would work jobs I hated to support her financially. Maybe even accept that I am a three-dimensional human with my own hopes and dreams. Give me a single authentic apology in 22 years together. Do not completely let herself go, not only physically but also in the way she treated me. Do not jump into defensive mode anytime I raised anything that she could construe as critical of her. Do not blame me for every difficulty she faced in life. Follow through on her side of the agreements we made. Honestly, she could probably make a list just like this. Live and learn, I guess. Story 7. Make me feel safe to share my deepest thoughts or emotions with her in the same way that I would always listen and support hers instead of getting uncomfortable or judgmental. Story 8. Mine ended pretty cleanly, and we both ended up happier afterward. We are still friends and keep in contact. However, I think if she had understood that it is okay for partners to have some space for their own hobbies, we might still be together. It is not like I did not try to include her in them, but if she was not interested, I should not have been expected to drop them. I would not have expected her to do the same. Story 9. Stop being careless with money. Also, doing some cooking and cleaning would have been helpful. For example, we were already struggling to make ends meet, and she decided the best thing to do was to treat her friend and her friend's friends to dinner. It was relatively cheap, around $70. I was active duty at the time, in a posting with highly variable hours. She refused to work due to intellectual disability and cooked dinner about once a year. Usually, I cooked if I was home, or she ordered pizza if I was not. Story 10. Stop trying to control me and everything we do. Emotional manipulation, blaming me for everything, overspending on frivolous items, taking the car that I bought without telling me, and finally, not acknowledging my crippling back pain. Story 11. She could have stopped sleeping with her coworkers and my friends. That would have most likely saved the marriage. Then she became greedy with the divorce, taking a year to tell me that she even wanted counseling. She hoarded my money. She took care of everything, and I had no reason to distrust her. She was my best friend. She knew that I would blindly sign something if she told me to, so she did that with a separation agreement about a month before she asked for couples counseling. I had no grounds to stand on in court. I was left with $5,000, which I had to spend on my nephew's funeral. It was a really hard time in my life. I am remarried now with 2 great kids and a wonderful wife, so I would go through that 1,000 times to get here again if I had to. Story 12. She did not treat me like she loved me. Instead, She treated me like I was a convenient option. She did not accept responsibility for the way she acted. She did not validate my feelings when I opened up to her. Instead, she dismissed my feelings as if they did not matter. Story 13. I'm pretty sure my first marriage would have ended anyway, but it would have lasted a little longer if she had not eaten my pizza. Here's the story. In 2010, I met a girl. We fell in love quickly. She moved in quickly, and we got engaged quickly. Between the engagement and the wedding, at which point we had known each other 13 months, I quit a job due to severe depression. My car was repossessed. Her engine became unrepairable and unaffordable. We were evicted, and we had to move in with a horrible roommate in a temporary house that was being sold. We were basically just paying utilities to watch the place. We got married and within weeks had to move again because they sold the house. We moved in with the elderly mother of a mutual friend. She was bipolar and took us in during a manic phase. The depressive phase kicked in and she began to hate us but refused to say anything. So she decided not to turn on the air conditioning anymore, which meant the house never got below 80 degrees, even at night. These were not good conditions for trying to find a new job. At that point, I had been in and out of minimum wage retail jobs for months, and my wife was working a part-time deli position at a grocery store. One night, we had a huge fight with her, and she told us to leave. We became legitimately homeless and faced the prospect of living out of a car we were borrowing from a friend. We had no family nearby and could not afford to leave the city because we could not give up the car nor the little income we had. 2 other friends took us into their already tiny house, where their twins shared a bedroom and they slept in the living room. They gave us a futon mattress in their storage room. 1 week later, the wife of the friend couple broke her leg, so we extended our stay to help care for her. A couple of weeks after that, my wife fell and broke her elbow. With no insurance, she lost her job. It took about a month, but I found a new part-time job. She recovered enough to get her part-time job back, and we moved into a rundown extended stay motel. After a couple of weeks there, bedbugs forced us to move to a slightly better but still extended stay hotel. Over the next year, we discovered how poor you could be and still have a roof and a bed. Food stamps only went so far, and my church pantry helped. We lived in 200 square feet and grew to hate each other. We did not have sex the last 9 months we were together. My job was improving with more hours, a couple of raises, and a promotion. She quit job after job because she was undependable and inconsiderate. The last straw was when we bought 2 pizzas from Aldi, 1 supreme and 1 pepperoni. I had a hard day at work and was desperately looking forward to eating that pizza since I had mostly been living off ramen and Chef Boyardee. When I got home to the hotel, she had eaten my pizza. Not because there was no other food in the house, but because she wanted it. A few weeks later, I told her we didn't work as a couple and needed to go our separate ways. We got divorced shortly thereafter. The core reason was that she was an extraordinarily inconsiderate person. It was never me, it was never us. It was always her. Story 14. Show me the same kindness, love, and respect that I gave her. The 2 emotional affairs did not help either. Story 15. Literally just communicate. I could read her pretty well, but I couldn't read her mind. Story 16. Say how she really feels. Mean what she actually says. Don't hold grudges, support my goals, avoid violence, and maybe don't cheat with the neighbor's son. Our communication was a disaster. My ex-wife would say things or we would resolve issues, but she would not actually mean it. It was up to me to notice that she actually felt differently and to fix the issue I thought was already resolved. Since I didn't fix the unknown problem, she would hold it against me for months or years. This would eventually lead to her blowing up at me about something I thought was resolved. This turned every resolved issue into a guessing game about whether we were actually okay. She learned to hold grudges from her mother. She held it against me for many years that I didn't trust her to pick a backpack for my freshman year in college. This was not a joke. It showed that I don't trust her when she is trying to help me. It resurfaced throughout our relationship and marriage. She didn't support me when I wanted to become a nurse because that doesn't seem like you, and you're just doing it for the money. I graduated and eventually got my dream job. Later, she was mad and wanted me to change specialties because you're wasting your skills. and her best friend was an intensive care unit nurse. Domestic violence and cheating are pretty straightforward. Story 17. Listen and take my concerns seriously. You dismissed my concerns and warnings that things were not working between us. Story 18. Work, stop doing drugs, take care of the children, care about others, and take responsibility for her mistakes. Story 19. My ex always had to be the victim or the hero. She frequently rewrote history in her head because she could not be wrong. To answer the question, she could have accepted blame and apologized when appropriate. She should have owned up to her mistakes. Blaming everything on me all the time and taking credit for everything damaged my self-worth and ego significantly. Story 20. Communicate. If she had been willing to communicate that issues were arising, we could have worked on them. Story 21. Perhaps not conceiving 2 other children who were not mine while we were married, and then trying to make me believe that they were my biological children. At the time, blinded by love, I even raised the first of the 2 as my own before finally leaving the toxic relationship. Story 22. Nothing really. We were fundamentally incompatible and got married because she was pregnant. We felt pressured into it by our families. A few years after our divorce, I met my real wife and have been happy for over 2 decades. My ex, unfortunately, was not so lucky and has had a series of bad relationships, including an abusive second marriage. However, she was a good mother to our now grown son. Story 23. Only now, after 18 years, am I understanding how toxic she was. My daughter is having the same problems with her as I did, and in her realizing how bad her mother is, it made me really understand why I left. She didn't consider my feelings. She was always right, I was always wrong, and I was never enough for her. Only after I left, years later, did a bunch of our mutual friends come and tell me they warned her that if she didn't treat me better, I was going to leave her. Yes, I left. Story 24. She earned 3 times my salary by the end of the relationship, but refused to contribute to the bills, and had more expensive tastes in gifts, restaurants, travel, and so on. She wanted me to spend a lot on her as before, but as she kept spending more on herself and not helping with the bills, the resentment and pressure built up. She had unexpected holidays, and I couldn't afford to travel with her. That was our last big fight. Story 25. Be appreciative of how I handled every financial aspect of the house. Story 26. Not her boss would have been a great start, but also her time since always told me that I was not owed that affection since she always told me she was too busy. Softness since all I have ever known was harshness and dismissiveness. Having my back since all she ever did was criticize and belittle me. Story 27. Get her mental health in order. Living here means that while I was the only one working and making fire, the rules of the house were being kept. Story 28. She made it clear to other men, especially overly friendly men, that she was in a relationship and not interested, asking them to back off and respect boundaries. She expected me to handle this when other men were hitting on her, even when I wasn't around, but she did not want me to be controlling or jealous. I was not jealous and have never been that kind of person. She often went out with her own friends or in mixed friend groups. I ended the relationship when she allowed her male friend, who had a crush on her, to get too close, and she would not shut him down, essentially leading him on until he kissed her. She still would not publicly reject him. I told her that she clearly did not value our relationship and marriage, told her to find somewhere else to live, and filed for divorce. It pained me greatly that she would not defend and uphold the boundaries of our relationship. Although she was not actively cheating, it felt like passive cheating because she did not have or enforce boundaries, things she would never have tolerated from me. Story 29. Be accountable. She said her money is her money, so she stopped paying the utilities. I already covered the mortgage and all repairs. Then she invested her money and savings into multi-level marketing, saying it was an investment to become a millionaire, and went into debt. She also stopped taking her medication and had a mental health crisis. She ended up being incarcerated for 4 years and came out openly racist, extremely religious, and homophobic. She blamed me for her mental health issues. Just a few small things, you know. Story 30. I found out a couple of years after we divorced that she was bipolar. Her doctors told her family that she was the worst they had ever seen. She has been in a group home and convalescent center for most of her life, from 25 to 77 years of age. We were married for a year and a half. She told me in the end that she needed a man to control her, and I was not him. I got remarried and have been married for 54 years. Story 31. My friend's wife absolutely refused to acknowledge and apologize when she was wrong, and he became fed up with being the only one who made concessions to keep the peace. He left. She is now on her third marriage. Sigh. Story 32. Reciprocation is key in a relationship in my opinion, and my ex simply did not put in the effort, so I moved on. I ignored my gut feelings about the red flags, like her smoking and drinking, thinking foolishly that we could work through it. In the end, she was not willing to change, and I realized I deserved better. I learned lessons from my divorce on how to become a better partner and man, so it all worked out in the end. However, I admit that it feels like I squandered a decade of my life. Story 33. She did not communicate her issues effectively. I checked in to see how the relationship was going for her. I would ask if there was anything I was not doing that would make me a better husband, or anything I was doing that was making me a worse one. She refused to communicate whatever issues she had. She even admitted that she knew I would fix any issues she raised, because I had done it before. She also would not stop seeking validation from men outside our marriage. This eventually escalated into an affair, but I discovered that she had been seeking outside male attention for years, possibly throughout the entire marriage. I have no way of knowing for sure. Regardless of which you think was the bigger impact, my ex ended our 14-year relationship and split up our family of 6 because she felt like it. Story 34. If she had been able to communicate, she would just shut down and keep things inside. I am particularly bad at being a mind reader. This is just answering the question, of course. The full story involves me being selfish and taking her for granted without considering her feelings like a mature partner. Story 35. Help clean the home once in a while, cook dinner, and avoid inappropriate relationships. Story 36. Talking about her issues with me sooner. Seeing her therapist earlier. Not quite quitting or getting married. Story 37. Nothing. In time, we just grew apart. We became different people. At first, we loved each other and were right for each other. Eventually, we were not. Fortunately, we were wise enough to recognize this and separate rather than try to force a lifetime together beyond what made sense. Story 38. She did not gaslight me. Anything she had an issue with was my fault. Anything I had an issue with was also my fault. I was afraid to bring any concerns to her because I knew she would twist them to make it my fault. Story 39. Have self-awareness, compassion, grace, and empathy. These qualities are required from the beginning when I evaluate potential partners. If they do not show these qualities within the first 2 dates, I do not have a third. I ask questions designed to allow her to reveal these qualities. As you get older, especially after a divorce, you realize how rare it is for someone to simply be a good person. When you have a good person beside you, they tend to bring peace and happiness with them. Story 40. Let things go. Yes, mistakes happen, feelings are felt, discussions are had, but there comes a point. 10 years, 2 of them in couples therapy later, I was just tired of hearing about things from 10 years ago for the 1000th time. If we can't get over what happened 10 years ago, then what about 2 years ago? The present? The rest of forever? 13 years in total gone. Story 41. Lift a finger when I was working all day to provide for our family. Oh, and also not perform oral sex on a random man during a trip to her hometown. Story 42. There are a number of things, but the primary one is not treating everything as what is hers, and what is mine is ours. Story 43. Oh, a question I am qualified to answer. First marriage. She should not have opened our relationship without discussing it with me and addressing some mental health issues she had. I was not allowed to ask about them. Second marriage. Sex was more than once every couple of years. She cared enough to check on my mental well-being. Yes, I know. It was all my responsibility. Personally, I just do not care what anyone thinks anymore. That was when I was young. Who cares now? Story 44. Stay away from cheating. That probably would have helped. She fell into the trap of seeking attention. She did not communicate with me, and I am not a mind reader. Story 45. Loved me for who I am, not for who she wanted me to be. Admitted that she had mental health problems instead of claiming everything was my fault. Realized that I am not her father and she is not her mother. Told me before marriage that sex was only to have children and not for pleasure. Story 46. What she did. Escalate passive-aggressive tendencies over the span of years. Lie to me about random things to be right and put me down. Make up random rules, then yell at me about them. Yell at me in front of our children. Do the opposite of what our counselor suggested. Invert the 5 love languages. Disturb my peace. Be unappreciative of keeping the house together and raising our kids, even though she started making as much as I do. Sex deteriorated in frequency and quality. And when it happened, it was obvious she was trying to use me, make fun of me in front of friends and family, and laugh at me for feeling bad when she was treating me poorly. Story 47. Not married, but in a serious relationship. Do not come out as polyamorous when the relationship is already in a difficult place. Also, choose better men to add to a polycule. Story 48. Probably nothing. We were done. I don't think she had it in her to alter her behavior for any reason. She had been told for basically her whole life that if she thought something, that thing was, by definition, correct. To disagree with her was to be wrong. Story 49. Longtime girlfriend used weaponized intimacy and refused sex unless I complied with her demands to manipulate me emotionally. Nice guys are not weak. Goodbye. Story 50. If she had not stopped having sex with me, had not started having sex with other people, had not become an alcoholic, and had not lost control when we had a child, maybe we would have had a chance. Story 51. Actually keep her promise of quitting smoking and getting a job. She did not lie to me when I asked if being with just me, a man, was enough. She was bisexual. She said yes. That turned out to be a lie, as she had relations with several women behind my back. What is funny is, if she had just talked to me, we could have had an open relationship or gone polyamorous. I am fine with either, but I know an open relationship would not have worked. When a friend of hers showed signs of having a crush on me, she lost control. Keep in mind, she had already been with 3 other random women at this point. No, I did not know, and yes, I ignored the clues. Story 52. Not pretended to be a lesbian for 6 months. Actually, that probably would not have mattered. I think our relationship ran its course regardless. Story 53. It's crazy reading these answers compared to the Reddit Ask Women version. Half of those answers were, he could have not beaten the crap out of me. Story 54. She could have taken the time to listen to me about how important the 3 for me at Chili's is. Now she is homeless. Story 55. As much as I loved her and loved being married to her, there is not just one thing, because there were too many things she did not do. One thing simply led me to make the decision to divorce. Anyway, it does not matter now. It is ancient history and I am long since remarried. Story 56. It was not her fault. I was suffering from depression and was caring for my disabled mother 2 days a week. I am glad she was able to move on with her life without me holding her back. Story 57. Be appreciative of how I handled every single financial aspect of the house, and not engage in inappropriate relationships with multiple people in the town. Story 58. To be honest, nothing. I was done with it and did not love her anymore. Actually, if she had won the lottery, I would have stayed. Story 59. Remember that just because you became a mother does not mean you stopped being my spouse and lover. Sex was still important. Story 60. Understood my side of things. Respect and acknowledge my attempts to repair things she requested. Prioritize the marriage over the children. Accountability. Story 61. Cook, clean, and take care of the children with even the slightest bit of enthusiasm. I will not discuss the bedroom. Story 62. Stop talking. Literally, it's quiet and she needs to continue about some issues she half read and keeps asking me questions that, if she read it, she would know. How hard is it to leave a man alone for an hour or two just to let him sit in peace? Story 63. Tried to save it. She did not want to save it, though. I asked what I could do to help our relationship, and she said, "Nothing. It is over." Story 64. Being more direct, she was unhappy and less interested, wanting to leave. We both stopped doing the small things for each other. She didn't feel like I was there for her. Her constant complaining was her way of trying to get attention from me, which men often do not understand. We simply don't see it. Before you close the door, have one last honest talk or you're leaving. Otherwise, a man feels sucker punched, and you both lose your last chance. Be straightforward. He won't see it otherwise due to complacency. Story 65. It was not worth it. I am glad I am done. If she showed me affection regularly and gave me space to do my own things, I would have stayed. Story 66. Rinsed the can opener off after using it. Stopped getting mad when I threw it at her head yelling, "It's going to rust." And she did not call the police on me. Getting a can opener thrown at your head does not just happen for no reason. There is a lead up. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.